So Tara reached out to me maybe a couple of months ago and asked if I would be available to be a part of an event that she was hosting, the Art of Healing Summit. And she wanted me to come on as a mental health professional or a wellness practitioner and to talk about how my work has healed me and how it heals others. And unfortunately, I was not able to be there in person, but I do want to thank, Tara for being flexible and giving me an opportunity just to hop on as a virtual speaker. So I'm not able to be there in person because I have an event, a private event at my space on the 28th. And so I just want to make sure that my energy is present and in alignment for what I have to do over the weekend. So you know how that goes, the whole balance of things. And so first I want to just thank Tara for giving me the opportunity to be present with you guys in a virtual space and to offer some things to you. And so if you don't know me, my name is Michelle Frierson. I'm the owner of M Frierson Therapy, a healing space. I am a clinical social worker and a psychotherapist. So I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 16 years. And so I sat down maybe like a week ago and Tara posed a question to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna answer the question, prepare for it, like I prepare for any other speech. My timing was a little bit off because we have a lot of things going on for Social Work Month. So I was like, okay, this is a very simple question. I'm gonna go ahead, answer the question, give myself an opportunity to kind of run through it, speak it, run out any kinks and record, and then we'll be good to go. And so yesterday, actually, I sat down to record the video, and my coordinator and our current social work trainee, because this is virtual, I don't have the same energy that I would have if you guys are in person. So I'm like, okay, I need someone to sit in the space with me. And that was my first time saying the information. So I was a little triggered, and we understand that triggers are pushing a button of things that are already stored inside. There were some things that came up for me when I thought about how I got to the work that I had not talked about in a while. And so I ran through it, and then I had to just stop, and I was like, I don't want to do this. So I had like a little fit. And so I said, let me just kind of sit with the things that came up for me, and then I'll resume another time. And so Tara, I contacted her this morning like, "Whoa, girl, you challenging me. So which is a good thing. I am one of those clinicians where I'm totally comfortable with self-disclosure, clinically relevant self-disclosure. So for me, bringing up things that align with treatment and to support my clients with moving along the healing continuum. But usually the things that I share are things that I have kind of worked through. So that initial response, some of the places that you may go in terms of energetically what you feel in your body and emotionally, I have already worked through that process, even if I'm still on that healing continuum with that specific thing. And so this, the answers to the question were things that I had not thought about in a while I had not processed. So my social work trainee, my intern, she encouraged me to be raw and real because the things that I shared with her supported her in wherever she is in her healing journey. And, Sister Tara just reminded me that even as wellness practitioners and as seasoned as we are in our spaces, it's important that we allow for ourselves to be in community. So I'm just gonna run through this thing. I am so happy and honored to be with you guys in this space, in this virtual space, in this energetic space. But I'm also just very honored that Tara wanted me to be a part of this event. So to answer the question, how my work heals me or has healed me and others, this is just like I got my little notes and I'm just going to run through it and share, and whatever the intention is, I pray and I visualize and I'm sending that you receive it in that way, and however it's meant to support you, I definitely hope for that. So when I was very young, I'm the youngest of 5 children. I have a brother, my eldest brother, he's 10 years older than me. And so when I was about 10 years old, he had went away to college, And he came home because he had a psychotic break, and he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. But before we got to that point, when I was very, very young, my dad had went to jail. So he was incarcerated when I was in about the first grade. And so we initially lived in just like a traditional home. But at some point, my mom, she's a single mother of 5 children. We had to leave our family home, and then we always moved to small, overcrowded spaces. And so my dad was incarcerated. A few years later, my brother went away to college. He came home because he had a psychotic break, and so we were all living in the house together. So at that time, I struggled a lot with low mood. I struggled a lot with suicidal thoughts. I definitely self-medicated. Even at a very young age, I can recall being 11 and 12 years old, and I was already, smoking weed. I was already drinking, smoking cigarettes, just self-medicating, because at that time I really didn't have the language for the things that I was experiencing. There really wasn't a place for me to slow down and process my emotions, because there was so much activity in the home with my brother navigating his mental illness, making sure that he was safe in the community, but then also, trying to protect myself and my siblings from the things that he was experiencing. And my mom, naturally, she worked a lot. She worked long hours because she had to raise 5 children. And so there were many times that she wasn't there with us, and we just had to make sure that we were okay. So I definitely was constantly in survival mode. I was angry. I felt disconnected. When I recall those memories, it just feels very dark and disconnected, or what we would say, today, disassociated. So I was not present in my mind and my body. And even with the self-medicating, I wasn't promiscuous, but I was permissive. So I wasn't necessarily in a desirous space or a desirous state seeking out sexual experiences, but I was definitely permissive more than I would have wanted to be. And so I remember just trying to cope, trying to numb, just trying to get through. And there were times where, now we would call it stimming. So like repetitive, motions that you do to just kind of create safety and calm and centeredness in your body. I remember times like just being on the couch, which is so ironic because I'm a therapist, but times me and my brother, who's 2 years older than me, we would just be on the couch, just rocking repetitively, just rocking back and forth for hours until we fell asleep, because the things that, we were experiencing in the house, with a psychotic person, and just, living in, we call it hood adjacent, but living in the inner city, there were just a lot of things that we were experiencing in the community, and it was overwhelming, and we didn't have a parent in the house consistently. And this is something that most of us go through, but this was just my specific experience. And so my mom, she did a really good job of, raising us to be self-aware. I always say that I was raised by a very witchy woman. So we always were, engaging in natural and holistic practices, essential oils, meditations, different things like that. But at some point now I realized that I took control of my own mental health. And so when I was in junior high school, I actually spent a lot of time in the summers just to myself. I would read, I would journal, and I would process my thoughts and feelings. Like that was one of the things that I would do. And at a very young age, I would tell my friends, like, I'm staying out the way. Like I need a couple of days, or I need like a week to get myself together. And that practice kind of carried me through. Even when I was a teenager, I just would always kind of go away, either in isolation or in solitude, just to kind of get myself together. And so it wasn't until I went to college that I had my own therapist. So my brother, when he came home with his diagnosis, he was linked with a therapist. He was actually a clinical social worker. So he was linked with a therapist that did a really good job of helping us to understand his disease, helping us to understand the prognosis of his diagnosis, but also how family involvement and family support was, really crucial to the success of, of his disease, of his mental illness. And so we leaned a lot into that. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was so intentional about following my brother in the community. There was always a fascination with him because he is my older brother. So before he was diagnosed, I would just be curious, like, what is he doing? And, you know, what's going on? But then when he came home, even though I was scared inside of the house, when I was in the community, I was very much in protective mode of him. I would go on dates with him back in the day. So I'm 43 now, he's 53. And so during that time when I was younger, I could go to the store and I could purchase my own cigarettes. I could go be sitting in the bar. I could go to RD's, and I could, when it used to be RD's on 116th and Buckeye, and I could, you know, I could sit in the bar and I could do these things. Now the laws are a little, you know, they're a little bit more strict. And so I was able to follow him into these spaces just to make sure he wasn't being taken advantage of, and different things like that. But, you know, to fast forward, when I went to college, I finally had my own therapist, right? And so I was able to understand that, you know, I wasn't necessarily, yes, I did have suicidal thoughts, and I did have low and dark thoughts and negative self-talk. And I did have low mood, but I actually was an anxious person with depressed features. And these suicidal thoughts, the suicidal ideations were, they were a symptom of the things that I was going through. And I also started to understand what situational depression was. So that was at the point where I was no longer relying on my fear and my pain and what my mother was giving me. I was taking control of my own mental health to understand, because the fear that I had in the home was starting to transfer out into the world, into other relationships that I was developing on my own, and I wanted to be present and to be more successful. And so around that time too, one of my childhood friends, her father, he had introduced me to Bob Marley. And so he would make the joke, like, if you're gonna be smoking weed, you know, you need to understand, you know, what's going on. You don't want to just be listening to the songs because he smokes weed. You need to understand the spirituality behind the words. And so when I started to listen to Bob Marley, when I started to study and understand Rastafarianism, I understood that those songs were like gospel, and they were speaking to the heart. And so there was one particular song, Running Away, and that song kind of pushed me and caused me to look further within and to ask questions and not to avoid, right? Because even in your journal, even in your processing, we know that you can still lie to yourself. You can still not be brave enough to be vulnerable with yourself. And so I wanted to know what I was running from. What was I escaping through the weed and the cigarettes and the Black and Milds and the alcohol and the permissiveness? I was giving people permission to take advantage of my body. I wasn't seeking these things out, but I was just giving that permission, right? And so I started to really lean into my healing journey in that healing space. And so reading, understanding the gospel, having my own therapist, reading The Power of Now at that time, helping me to be present in the moment and to challenge my anxiety, to do the reality testing. I felt like that allowed for me to address things in real time. And that is when I really, really started to practice self-compassion, which is something that I'm always preaching to my clients, leaning into that self-compassion, right? So I think that is just to give a little background of where I came from and how I got to this point. And so when, you know, I started to do all this work, at some point when I was in college, I thought that I wanted to go into education. But when I started to do my student teaching, that's when I started to just kind of pay attention to other things that were happening with the children. And so I was encouraged to go into the field of social work. And when I went into social work, that's when I really found my home. Just being in the community, figuring out different things that were happening in these marginalized communities that I came from, seeing the breakdown of the family dynamics and how, you know, institutional racism actually created the dysfunction and what that looked like over time in terms of the structure of the community and the structure of the family just in general. And so when I started to pursue therapy, it was definitely in a community mental health space, but I always had my eye in a more insight oriented place. So naturally, I was just kind of groomed and coached into going into psychotherapy, which I'm really glad that one of my old supervisors, and now she's my good friend, Ariel Ballard, she really encouraged me to do some deeper work and to hone in on my clinical skills. And so I think that when I think about all of the tools that I use, the journaling, being reflective, leaning into spirituality, understanding what it means to be a person who lives with anxiety, what that means for me, being self-aware, so I can understand what tools I need to put in place to be successful, right? Those were things that really, really helped. One of the things that I say to my clients often is that healing happens in the gaps. And when we think about those small spaces, those quiet spaces, those moments where you have that pause, that is when, healing starts to happen. And I feel like this is one of those moments. This is an opportunity for me to kind of see where I am on the healing continuum, and for me to have that quiet moment with myself, to think about how I can deepen in my love for myself and increasing my sense of self-worth and believing, right, that I am enough, that I am good enough, that I do belong, just kind of reinforcing those things. So again, thank you, Sister Tara. But so when I think about the things that I do for myself and then now translate that to the practice, what we were told, when my brother came home, that understanding his diagnosis, how, family, community, that support, how those things are so important to the prognosis of the illness. I think that those are things that I carry with me. And those are things that are incorporated into the structure of M Frierson Therapy, a healing space. This is a community space. This is a space that is built to be accessible to the community and to be a support. We are so serious about providing a psychoeducation or helping people understand what is going on with them, developing or increasing that sense of self-awareness so that you accept yourself, that radical self-acceptance. And then what tools do I need to put in place to be successful, to be able to move in whatever direction I want to go? That is really the core of the formula. But in addition to that is starting from the heart, operating from a heart space. And so there is this beautiful book that is written by Irvin Yalom. It's called The Gift of Therapy. And I'm looking at my bookshelf, it's behind me, but it's, the book is just a lot of small chapters that kind of touches on the different spaces and places that you may go within psychotherapy. And one of the things that Irvin Yalom talks about is operating from a heart space. And so before you touch on the clinical work, before you touch on the diagnosis, if you don't have anything else, you have your heart. And what I have learned is that a lot of times when people talk to me, however they get in contact with me, I see and I feel that they are coming with heart wounds, right? And so there is a challenge or a lack of, or whatever, a deficit of love within themselves from their experiences in life. And so before, we really get into the clinical space, we start from a loving space. We start with the therapeutic relationship and building of community and building of a sense of family. And even though a lot of folks don't feel like it's appropriate for a therapist to say, I love you, and to touch and to laugh and to cry and to eat and do whatever with their clients, I do that in this space. We do that in this space because we know how to develop relationships. We understand what the components of a healthy relationship is, even in our dysfunction, because we all have a little bit of dysfunction, but being able to sense what is an appropriate touch, what is an appropriate expression of love to our clients. And I have had experiences where I felt intimidated by someone's experiences and their diagnosis. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do, but I'm going to love on that person and I'm going to send them love and I'm going to lean into that loving kindness meditation and just send that and extend that and visualize all of that, massaging and healing and transforming those heart wounds. And when you start to see that happen and the person soften, then they are ready to receive the diagnosis and understand their symptoms and start to do the work of self-awareness and self-acceptance. So that is one of the things that I feel really allows for us to do the healing work that we do. Those are the things that I have done for myself, within myself, and for people in my natural personal community. And those are things that are important for what we carry into this space. And then we slap the clinical work and the clinical training on top of it. So that's where I start with the heart, and then we move to the clinical, always having the community or the family dynamic in mind. And so I think that with having that model, the work that we do in this space continues to heal me every time. Every time we see a breakthrough, every time we have a successful event, every time I have an opportunity to be in spaces like this in whatever form, anytime I have the opportunity to be vulnerable, to feel brave enough and feel open enough and bold enough to be vulnerable. I'm so grateful that I can be vulnerable with Tara. I'm so grateful. My sister Sylvia, I know she is a part of this event as well. I'm so grateful to have those relationships, because every time I have a moment of vulnerability, I know that I'm attracting more love and more authenticity into my life. And I know that that is reflecting out to my clients and to our community partners, and there is an exchange of love and healing. So that is what came up for me when, I answered this question. How does my work heal me, or how has it healed me, and how it heals others? It's about connection. It's about presence. It's about the willingness to show up fully and authentically. This is what you're getting today. I'm sitting on the couch today instead of sitting in my chair, and it feels really good. Healing is not, there is not a destination healing. Healing is a continuum. Sometimes we're moving forward and sometimes we're pulled back. But every time we snap back, know that we're not going to stay there that long, because you have traveled the road and developed the tools and seen the landscape of the road ahead. So you know that you can continue to move forward. So I just want to encourage you guys to understand your patterns, be self-aware, understand those triggers, that we all are just mirroring things to one another. The triggers, again, are just folks pushing a button of things that are already stored inside. One of my great mentors told me that the goal is to remove the button. So pulling those things out, getting with other people who are doing the healing work, getting with a qualified mental health professional, a spiritual leader, a wellness practitioner that is doing the work. Be present with yourself and don't judge. You have no reason to judge yourself. You were supposed to be here because you are, right? And there's something in it for all of us. So, as I say again, healing happens in the gaps, and this is one of those gaps. This is one of those spaces and those quiet moments that I'm so grateful to be in. That is my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following me. If you follow me, thank you for your support, your love, for uplifting me. And I hope that something in this talk resonated with you, and I extend a piece of my heart to you. So y'all have a good one, and I will talk to you soon.